Welcome everyone to the Microstructure Exchange. Great to see everyone here. Today we have no announcements, so we'll go straight to the talk. And we have Yunus Topbas, who will present the paper entitled "When Exchanges Are Not Exchanges: Evidence from Two Types of Dark Trading." And Yunus will take questions when he gets to a question break. And while waiting for that, we can type questions in the chat. Co-author Mao Ye is here and he can respond in the chat if suitable. So Yunus, take it away.
Thank you so much, Bern. And thank you so much. It's our great pleasure to be invited to present our work and titled "When Exchanges Are Not Exchanges: Evidence from Two Types of Dark Trading." And this is the joint work with Mao, and then he will be on the chat. Okay. It's a well-known fact that US equities market is fragmented. You can trade the same stock in 16 national securities exchanges and 225 off-exchanges. Off-exchanges collectively is known as dark trading, and dark trading venues is responsible for 44% of consolidated volume. And they usually lack transparency. They usually do not display codes, so they don't have pre-trade transparency. They also don't have post-trade transparency because there is no real-time information on trading volume in each dark venue. The literature overlooks dramatic differences within dark trading. There are alternative trading systems, ATSs, and non-alternative trading systems, non-ATSs. The SEC evaluates dark venues, economic settings, and then determine their legal framework. In this regard, the SEC considers ATSs functionally equivalent to national securities exchanges, while non-ATSs are not considered so. So ATSs are functionally equivalent to exchanges. And then what's an exchange? It is defined in the Exchange Act under Rule 3B-16. A trading platform is legally considered an exchange if it uses predetermined non-discretionary methods to bring together and execute orders of multiple buyers and sellers. So we highlight 2 points. One is they use non-discretionary trading rules and procedures. Second, there has to be multiple buyers and multiple sellers. Multiple buyers, single seller, no. Vice versa, no. It has to be multiple from both sides. And national securities exchanges are exchanges. So NYSE, NASDAQ are exchanges. But ATSs among dark trading are exchanges as well. Because ATSs execute multilateral orders as agents according to predetermined procedures without the discretion of their operators or without the discretion of counterparties. And then well-known examples of ATSs are dark pools. UBS ATS, Barclays ATS, ITG POSIT, these are dark pools. There used to be electronic communication networks until 2016, but in the current framework, all ATSs are dark pools. In contrast to ATSs, among dark trading, non-ATSs are not exchanges because they generally commit capital and engage in bilateral trading. And engage in bilateral trading with their customers as principals and or exercise discretion in order handling and execution practices. So they are bilateral and or they use discretion. Because of these two features, they are not considered exchanges. Examples are traditional broker-dealer services or trading tasks like UBS Securities, Barclays Capital, or Citadel and Virtue. These are known as wholesalers, but they also operate single dealer platforms. At least I know the Virtue is operating as single dealer platforms too. Okay, let me show you first some trends. The x-axis is the calendar year from 2014 to 2023. And the y-axis is the fraction of consolidated volume. And the top two lines is a well-known trend. Liquidity moved from exchanges to off exchanges. But the bottom two lines is a less well-known trend. The liquidity moved from ATSs to non-ATSs. In 2014, ATSs were responsible for 16% of trading volume, but in 2023, ATSs were responsible between 10 to 12% of trading volume. They lost significant market shares over the past decade. One reason is that ATSs have been heavily fined by the SEC. Some investors lost confidence and switched to other platforms. But I will show you that our results are consistent with these trends because we will show that market quality decreased on ATSs after a transparency change, and market quality improved on non-ATSs after a similar transparency initiative on these platforms. So our results are consistent with these trends and indicate that changes in market quality can partially play a role in these trends. And then let me describe the current regulatory framework in the US equities market. There are two types. There are exchanges and non-exchanges. Exchanges falls within 3B-16. These are the platforms using non-discretionary methods and operating multilateral and executing multilateral orders. And there are two types. Exchanges and ATSs falls under 3B-16 if a platform meets the definition of exchange 3B-16, it has to register either A or B. If it chooses to register as a national securities exchange under A, those are the exchanges with the tightest regulations. But if a platform meeting the legal definition of exchange can choose to register as an ATS in return for complying with additional requirements specified under regulation ATS. Reg ATS has exemptions from some exchange rules. For instance, national securities exchanges are subject to fair access rule, so they have to accept everyone. But non-ATSs, ATSs are exchanges, but they are not subject to fair access rule. So they can exclude traders. One common thing between A and B is they are agents. Exchanges are agents, and to the best of our knowledge, and then all ATS are operating as an agents as well, at least primarily. But in terms of the excluding traders, still, although there is no fair access applying to ATSs, still ATSs using predetermined non-discretionary rules. So this imposes a constraint to exclude orders. Also, in addition, ATSs need to file with the SEC at least 20 days in advance to make any material changes in their operations. So what is non-discretionary? The SEC defines a crucial element of being non-discretionary is that the rules are predetermined and communicated with the participants so that customers have an expectation that their orders will be executed according to these predetermined and communicated rules. And then the second type of platforms is non-exchanges. And then they don't have such a, they don't follow predetermined non-discretionary rules. These are outside 3B-16 and they have discretion, and then they operate bilaterally most of the time. And then they keep discretion to discriminate orders to execute internally or route out without pre-committing to particular procedures. So the customers of non-ATSs do not have an expectation that their orders will be executed to a particular procedures that's communicated in advance beyond Reg NMS. Also, non-ATSs, there is no prior notice to SEC in order to make material changes. And non-ATSs are mostly principals. And the literature focuses different part of this diagram. And then, I'm sure all of you has papers on one part of this diagram, for example, and then the Chester, Tom, and Jonathan is analyzing exchanges versus dark trading, A versus B plus C, in terms of post-trade transparency requirement and other papers. Andre and Ingrid has a paper comparing the market quality between exchanges and non-ATSs, A versus C. So there are many other papers analyzing different parts of this diagram, but we are the first paper that compares between B and that analyze and compare the market quality between B and C. Okay. In this market microstructure, the key to avoid adverse selection is to exclude informed order flow. And being an exchange or not affects a platform ability and incentive to exclude informed orders. Excluding orders under predetermined non-discretionary rules is more difficult because they are communicated with their customers, and customers have an expectation that ATS will follow these predetermined non-discretionary rules, and then any material changes requires 20-day advance notice. In this framework, non-ATSs retain more discretion to exclude informed orders. In addition, ATSs are agents. They match orders between customers and collect fees. Non-ATSs often commit capital and trade with customers in a bilateral setting. So in this setting, the watching informed trading activity is less stringent when acting as agents. In case of ATSs, in case of non-ATSs, I am adversely selected, is more painful than in case of ATSs, someone else is adversely selected. In this regard, non-ATSs have a stronger incentive to exclude informed orders. And these arguments are consistent with the fines by the SEC, like the ATSs violated some rules, misrepresented some rules to have more discretion, or they misrepresented the inclusion of informed traders in their platforms. What we do in this paper, we examine two transparency shocks. In 2014, FINRA began requiring each ATS to disclose weekly volume, the weekly trading volume, and with a similar policy extended to non-ATSs in April 2016. This gives us a unique opportunity to examine whether dark trading is a unified entity or not, considering exogenous and identical nature of both shocks. And we have three sets of results. The first one, transparency, unambiguously attracts more order flow and reduces execution time. Why? Broker-dealers use past volume as indicators for future routing decisions. Past volume is one indicator for future liquidity. So broker-dealers take this information into account, and then we have found evidence on the broker's documents about their usage of past volume, liquidity component, because past volume is an indicator of liquidity and execution probability. But other than these, transparency has opposing effects on other market quality metrics. ATS shock increased transaction cost on ATSs by increasing adverse selection. And in contrast, non-ATS shock decreased transaction cost on non-ATSs by decreasing liquidity provision profits. So ATS shock and non-ATS shock have opposing effects on transaction costs of these platforms. Also, they affect transaction costs through different channels. ATS shock changes the nature of order flow in terms of informed, uninformed orders, and non-ATS shock intensifies the competition and reduces the market-making profits on non-ATSs. Also, the third result is these two shocks can reconcile contrasting results on identifying retail trades in tech. Bomurjos, Zhang, BJZZ proposed a method to identify retail trades in tech. And there are two papers, the critics from Battaglia et al. And then Barber et al. And they show that the accuracy of BJZZ is not good. Okay, what is BJZZ? Briefly, they start from off-exchange trades in tech, and then they look at price improvements. If price improvements less than 0.4 are considered retail, for example, let's suppose the S price is 1.01, and then you bought the stock at 1.008, your price improvement would be 0.2 cents, and then this is considered a retail buy. Similar argument applies to retail sales. The logic behind this is that retail orders are executed mainly on wholesalers, a type of non-ATSs, and wholesalers offer minuscule price improvements. They offer minuscule price improvements to retailers, and price improvement for institutions are larger, such as 0.5 cents. And in this framework, the Barber et al. Sent 85,000 trades using their own money, and then they check if BJZZ is accurate or not. And then Battaglio et al. And use proprietary retail and institutional data to check BJZZ, and both documented that accuracy of BJZZ is around 30 to 35%. And there are both type 1 and type 2 errors. Like type 1 error, labeling institutional trades as retails, and type 2 is labeling retails as institutions. And our interpretation is different sampling periods. Different sample periods can result in the disparities in the results and can partially reconcile these discrepancies. Non-ATS show significantly increased price improvement on non-ATSs, so making retail traders more like institutional trades, type 2 error, and ATS shock reduced price improvements on ATSs and making institutions more like retails, and type 1 error. So these two shocks increased both type 1 and type 2 errors, so that maybe BJZZ was working better before these two transparency, and then after that, it started to work, it started to get worse, so that at least these two shocks can partially reconcile the results. And so if you have any question, I'm happy to take them.
So while waiting for hands raised, maybe I start off with a question. This is a great overview of how it works in the US, and I was trying in my head to map it to the European context. And the ATSs, multilateral and non-discretionary dark markets, is what I think we would call dark pools here, and the non-ATSs would correspond to systematic internalizers. In the European context, though, it is central, I think, in the legislation that the systematic internalizers, they always have to take on risk and trade bilaterally and act as principals. And you said, picking on words here, you said they often do that. In Europe, it would be always. So what kind of exceptions are there to that?
I mean, non-ATSs, like a standard broker-dealers, do not need to execute orders on a principal capacity. So they can choose to match to customers' orders. They don't need to do that, but depending on the, order book and the nature of the order, they can choose to do so. So this is a little bit different from, there are different types of non-ATSs, like single dealer platforms I think is closer to what you described as systematic internalizers. So they execute all orders in a principal capacity, and they are the only counterparty. Did they answer your question, Bern?
Yeah, thanks. Excellent.
Thank you.
Pankaj?
Yeah. So I think the slide you were showing this before this questions one, are you mostly concerned about marketable orders here? Because a lot of retail traders also submit passive orders, right? The standing limit orders. How are those treated in this entire framework, and also in your framework of ATS versus non-ATS? Will the retail limit orders be treated differently by the two types of participants?
We focus on only marketable orders, market orders, and marketable limit orders, because we use -5 data. I will come to that point, and then so -5 data is better in these two order types, and then have exemptions for many limit orders.
Yeah, but isn't that a great portion of lots of folks submit limit orders routinely, right? What really happens to them? I think that's an important question. I thought you would be able to answer it, but that's fine. Thank you.
You mean the like retail orders sent the limit orders, right?
All sorts of stop orders, limit orders. Yeah, I mean, the non-marketable limit orders are also providing liquidity, right? As are these other participants. So how are those treated at each of these market venues would be interesting question.
So, I mean, it's, as I said, it's not our data, but non-ATSs have, like, I think depending on the whether retail orders, those type of orders are more likely to be informed or not, they route these orders to exchanges. Like wholesalers sent some of these retail orders, and which SEC documents show that more toxic retail orders are sent to ATSs or the ATSs or exchanges. And I think ATSs do not, most ATSs, almost all ATSs do not directly deal with retail order flow. They are generally, the retail orders are sent through wholesalers to these platforms. Was that a better answer to your question, or?
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. And then we may, yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I just follow up this European question because after MiFID II, dark pool is prohibited in European market, and so essentially everything moved to internal systematic internalizer. I just wonder, during the review, have you seen any review say after this move, after MiFID II, Europeans market become more efficient? I just wonder because it looks like, I don't know if there's anybody do this research before or have anybody see this kind of paper. Because I know it's after after this MiFID II, a lot of liquidity use belong to dark pool, they move to exchange, yeah, and systematic internalizer, of course, get quite a lot of liquidity as well. But I don't know. I mean, it would be very, very interesting research question. Does this move really improve European markets efficiency? I don't know if any of you hear about any research about this.
I mean, to the best of my knowledge, I haven't seen a paper, but I'm not an expert on European markets either. So, yeah, I think maybe.
Yeah, it is.
Just on this, hello, Paul Besson, quant research on Euronext. Yes, on this, I must say we published something. We are publishing something that presented to Imperial College, but there is a paper that is published from Aramian, Fatme Aramian. She published 2 papers. She worked with Carol Comerton-Ford. So Aramian, she published on single dealer platform in Europe. So it's interesting papers. Just to mention that they exist, Yunus. And just who makes the decision of routing the trade on ATS versus non-ATS? It matters a lot who really makes the decision, the source of the broker, or, I mean, this point is critical to me, that's all.
Yep, thank you so much, Paul. And then let me continue, and then I will take more questions later. And so this is my outline, and then I will introduce data and empirical framework, and then discuss FINRA transparency initiatives, and then show you the results on order submission and market quality. And then I will go back to BJZZ, and then finally I discuss the policy implications and we'll conclude that. Our data is the SEC rule 605 data. This is also known as -5 data. These are monthly execution quality reports from all market centers are required to provide this report, and includes from exchanges, ATS and non-ATSs on a per stock order type and order size basis. And there are 5 order types and 4 order sizes, which makes the 20 categories for each stock, but we are focusing only in terms of order type, market orders and market orders and marketable limit orders. And we have 2 sets of market quality metrics. The first one is execution speed, which is the time passing from order received to execution. And the second one is execution cost. And execution cost, we have 3 variables. Number 1 is transaction cost, and the effective spread, we use effective spread to measure transaction cost from the perspective of a trader, which is equal to realized spread price plus price impact. Realized spread is a proxy for liquidity supplies profit, and price impact measuring adverse selection risk. And I mean, I'm sure all of you are familiar with these definitions, but let me go over quickly what these measures are. to emphasize that SEC's definition of these variables are slightly different from tech data, because SEC considers the time of the order receipt to calculate these variables. So time 0 is the time of the order receipt. We observe bid ask and midpoint M0, and then T minus 0 measures execution speed, and PT is execution price. And suppose a buy order, and then at price PT, effective spread is for buy orders double the amount between the execution price minus the midpoint at the time of the order received. PT minus 2 times PT minus M0. This is different from tech data. And we use effective spreads and all other realized spread and price impact in basis points. And then 5 minutes after, bid and ask price changes. And then we observe the new midpoint, and the difference between the midpoints, MT plus 5 minus M0, for buy orders, double the amount of between the midpoints gives us the adverse selection cost price impact. But here again, it's compared to the time of the order received, MT plus 5 minus M0. And then the remaining component of effective spread is realized spread, which is double the amount of PT minus MT plus 5. So these are very standard definition, except for SEC's usage of time of the order received. And effective spread is equal to realized spread plus price impact. We examined 2 shocks on market transparency, 2 FINRA transparency initiatives. Before these shocks, volume on each ATS or non-ATS was unknown. All post-trade data was under the same identifier D in tech or in the consolidated tape. It still does in tech data, but now we have more information about the liquidity distribution across the volume distribution across ATS and non-ATSs. In May 2014, FINRA required each ATS to disclose weekly volume and trade data on a stock-by-stock basis with a 2-week or 4-week delay, depending on the characteristic depending on whether this stock is more liquid or less liquid. And FINRA extended this transparency initiative to non-ATSs in April 2016, and with one difference. There's de minimis exceptions. De minimis stocks, if a stock is not traded more than 200 times on a daily average basis in any non-ATS during a reporting week, then only the aggregate weekly volume for the stock is published. And this aggregate volume does not provide new information because that volume can be inferred by using tech data and the ATS data, because this is the second shock. And then we will use these de minimis stocks to conduct a placebo test. And our method is we use a higher order fixed effect and market quality. Market quality has 3 dimensions: IMT. I is stock, and we include only ordinary common stocks listed on NYSE, NASDAQ, and MX. M is the group, treatment or control group, and T is the time, pre-policy or post-policy. Pre-policy includes 3 months before the shock, and then post-policy includes 3 months after the shock. And then alpha IM is the stock group fixed effect. This is a higher order fixed effect, and it simplifies to a standard 1-dimensional fixed effect if the alpha IM is linearly additive in stock and the stock fixed effect and the group fixed effect. But if these 2 different fixed effects non-linearly interacts with each other, our model performs better. And then we have 2 dummies. The one is post policy, and we have another dummy, treatment, if it is in the treatment group. So, and then our variable of interest is treatment time post, is beta, which measures the effect of the transparency shocks. Okay, to start with, transparency attracts more order flow in a fragmented market because broker-dealers use past volume as indicators for future routing decisions. And then we have three variables. We use shares, number of shares submitted. We have order size, number of shares submitted divided by number of orders submitted, and the execution time. Execution time in seconds. We take the square root of the first and third variable, but it's not special. It's just to reduce skewness. We can use log, or we can use the variables in levels. And then this table shows the impact of ATS transparency on order flow and execution time on ATSs compared to other market centers. And the transparency increased number of shares submitted by 2.6% on ATSs compared to the pre-policy median value of this variable on ATSs. And order size increased as well by slightly more than 18%. And then execution time decreased more than 19%. So transparency makes order submission process more efficient, and then investors started to submit more shares, larger order sizes, and then they get execution quicker. We observed the same for the non-ATS transparency, the right-hand side. And the right-hand side shows the impact of non-ATS transparency on non-ATSs compared to other market centers. And we observe similar changes. The number of shares submitted increased by 23.1%, order size increased by 3.5%, and execution speed, execution speed increased mean execution time decreased by 32.2%. So transparency has similar impacts on the order flow, order submissions, and execution time on both ATS and non-ATSs. However, transparency has opposing effects on transaction cost. The left-hand side shows the impact of ATS transparency on transaction costs on ATSs compared to other market centers. And then we normalize dollar effective spread reported in -5 by stock price or quoted spread. And then in the first case, transaction cost on ATSs increased by 8.5% after transparency. And if we normalize effective spread by quoted spread, it increases by 7.5%. And we observe the different results for the case of non-ATSs. Non-ATS transparency reduced transaction costs on non-ATSs by 11% if we normalize by price, and by 19.1% if we normalize this by quoted spread. So the transparency has different effects on transaction cost on ATSs and non-ATSs. Equally importantly, transparency affects transaction cost through different channels. Transaction cost has two components: liquidity provision profits and adverse selection risk. And in the case of ATS transparency do not affect liquidity provision profits on ATSs. This is not surprising, given the fact that ATSs do not directly control realized spreads because they are agents. But adverse selection cost price impact increases by 13.7%. This shows that informed investors can benefit more this transparency initiative because they make more independent compared to uninformed uninformed investors. They make more independent venue choices to leverage their informational advantage. And also, in the current market microstructure, like some uninformed orders, like the retail traders orders are not directly sent to ATSs. There's an intermediary, non-ATSs and wholesalers. Wholesalers pre-screen these retail orders and then route them out to ATS or exchanges. So in this framework, ATSs are more vulnerable to informed trading, and then they have less ability as being exchanges and less incentive as being agents to exclude informed order flows. So this dynamic leads to higher adverse selection following transparency on ATSs. In the case of non-ATS transparency, transparency does not change the nature of order flow on non-ATSs. Because one thing, non-ATSs have more ability as non-exchanges and more incentive as principals to exclude informed orders. And then this result, there's no change in realized the price impact. It shows that the nature of order flow remains the same. We can say that the increase in informed order flow is balanced with the increase in uninformed order flow, or there's no change at all in the nature of order flow. But liquidity provision profits decreased by 79.2% because this type of transparency can intensify competition for order flow. The intuition comes from IO literature in the platform competition from the IO literature. And then this IO literature showed that when firms observe their competitors' market shares, and when the customers also observed all the market shares, this can lead to higher price competition and reduce profits. This is one thing that we can see here. And then liquidity provision profits decrease due to intensified competition. And then finally, before the break, fill rates results are consistent with the previous slide. Fill rates is equal to number of shares submitted divided by, number of shares executed divided by number of shares submitted. So these are the fraction of successfully executed shares. And higher informed trading activity can reduce fill rates as informed orders generally concentrate on the same side of the market. And we have this has been documented previously in the literature, among others, that there is the Hendershot and Madison 2000 and Ye and Zhu 2018. And then we observe a reduction in fill rates on after ATS transparency. ATS's fill rates decreased by 13.7%. And we observe no change in fill rates on non-ATSs after transparency on this platform. So these are consistent with the previous slides, with the previous channels as well. So the nature of the order flow changes in the case of ATS transparency, but it doesn't change in the second show. And let me take questions if you have one.
So if there are any questions, you can just speak up.
If not, I can continue and finish it, and we can take the questions in the end. So, okay. Now, finally, we are conducting a placebo test. And so we have de minimis stocks. Let me remind you, if a stock is not traded more than 200 times on a daily average basis in any non-ATS during a reporting week, then only the aggregate weekly volume for this stock is published. So there is no new information because, as I said, this aggregate volume can be inferred by using tag data and ATS data. And then we found that transparency has no effect on execution speeds, spreads, fill rates of these de minimis stocks at the 5% significant levels. And this provides evidence that transparency impacted execution, the transparency impacted market quality. Indeed, it wasn't just like a broader market trends. And then let me go back to BJZZ. So BJZZ, the idea behind it, retail orders are executed mainly on wholesalers, and wholesalers offer only minuscule price improvements. And the Barber's paper, they Barber and with other 4 co-authors manually placed 85,000 orders at 6 retail brokers using their own money. And many orders received large price improvements, and BJZZ was labeling them as institutions, type 2 errors. And Battaglio's paper Battaglio's paper used proprietary retail and institutional data and showed that institutional orders receive small price improvements. And BJZZ labels them as retail type 1 errors. And both documented accuracy of BJZZ around 30-35%. And our results indicate that BJZZ in both BJZZ and the critics can be correct because they analyze different periods. BJZZ is analyzing the sample 2010 to 15, and the critics are analyzing 2021 and 2022. Actually, Battalio's paper uses institutional data from 2012 so that the type 1 errors was documented before transparency shocks. But I will show you that still type 1 error is likely increased after transparency. So this is how transparency on ATS has affected price improvement on these platforms. And we have 3 variables. And the one is percentage of shares receiving price improvements among all executed shares. The second one is average price improvements in cents. And the third one is average price improvement is basis points. And transparency decreased price improvement on ATSs by 38.1%. This is the average change among all these 3 variables. And this generated type 1 error. As I said, Battalio's paper already documented that there was type 1 error, but this transparency was likely to increase type 1 errors in the BJZZ method. And also, in this, the non-ATS transparency increased price improvement on non-ATSs by 22.5%. And this generates a type 2 error. Because this means that, one type of non-ATS is wholesalers, and retail traders started to receive larger price improvements. And in summary, these 2 shocks, they make retail and institutional trades closer to each other, so that after these 2 shocks can reconcile the disputes between BJZZ and the critics to a certain extent. Finally, our paper is related to the 2 SEC proposals. The first one is SEC has revised SEC Rule 605. It was proposed in December 2022, but it has been approved just this month, in I think 1 or 2 weeks ago. The goal was to reduce exempted volumes such as odd lots. Odd lots were not included in previous -5. And then our paper shows that observing the entire volume by using FINRA data of a stock in a venue provides additional information beyond the execution quality statistics derived from a fraction of the volume in that venue. And if Rule 605 covered entire volume, FINRA transparency wouldn't have mattered. In this sense, revising 605 and expanding its volume coverage potentially can provide further info. Our paper is also related to order competition rule. This rule has not been approved yet, and then it's proposing to mandate auctions for certain retail orders. Chester, Tom, and Jonathan has a paper on this. It's a great paper to discuss how this order can impact the retail orders. And our paper shows that transparency, even when provided at a low frequency with significant delays and lacking price information, can dramatically impact market quality. And non-ATS transparency significantly reduce realized spread and increase price improvement. So a small improvement in transparency can change market quality significantly. Then the SEC may consider solutions before making more structural changes. And final implication is that our paper's implication, regulating dark trading as a unified entity is challenging. The same policy shocks can lead to opposing outcomes. So should we separate D into ATSs and non-ATSs in the tech data? This can give us better information. This can give traders better information. And then, so I think it's worth considering to make this separation, giving ATS and non-ATSs different legal and economic characteristics. And let me conclude, dark trading is not legally homogeneous because there are exchanges. ATS are exchanges and non-ATSs are not exchanges. ATSs exchanges because they use non-discretionary rules and they are multilateral. They execute orders from multiple buyers and multiple sellers. And non-ATSs have different types, and they are not exchanges. They don't follow discretionary. They don't follow non-discretionary rules, and then they don't need to be They are not multilateral. And legal and economic distinctions between these platforms can cause significant differences in their market quality. Transparency reduces execution time on both ATS and non-ATSs. Also, transparency attracts more order flow. These are the two common things between the two shocks. But transparency has opposing effects on other market quality metrics. And then we also show that BJZZ and critics different sampling periods can partially reconcile the results and can partially reconcile the results because different periods that correspond to different transparency periods. And then finally, we have two broad policy the relevance. The first one is the SEC might consider MITE solutions before making more structural changes. The second one, it's difficult to regulate dark trading as a unified entity, given their legal and economic distinctions. And thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Yunus. The floor is open for questions. There any questions?
Actually, if there's no question, actually, Paul, I will let you ask question for.
Yes,
Paul has a question.
And Yunus, thanks a lot for your presentation. Surely the US structure differs from the European one, and this legal structure that matters a lot is not that clear, as you said, for sure. Leaving some kind of difficulties for sure. Nevertheless, regarding, for example, single dealer platform, it seems that here, regarding the discretion to better understand economically who profits and who does not profit from this routing, and can explain a lot of these consequences that are not so frequently addressed in the academic literature, notably by Aramian, who's not discussing this with this angle. Can you highlight, Yunus, in, for example, for a basic algorithmic trade in the US setting, the choice of routing in multilateral venues versus a single dealer platform, who is it, according to you, which interest does it serve? Where is it done? Is this choice done by the investor, by the broker? And so here you could highlight probably interesting consequences. It means who has interest to provide liquidity on one venue or another one, and in the interest of who. I mean, I think it matters to have this economic view. So if you could highlight on the routing, who decides on the routing specifically for automated trades, it would be interesting to me.
Yeah, thank you, Paul. I mean, just to clarify your question, you mean like from the perspective of the platform owners or from the perspective of traders, like who is using these platforms or who is operating these platforms?
Yes, because at times, for example, when the bank is operating the platform as well, here there are some ambiguities because the bank can be the broker and can be the platform operator as well. So here is not as clear cut. So yes.
I think all like large investment banks in the US have both ATSs and non-ATSs. So they are in, I mean, not like Goldman Sachs, giving examples, Morgan Stanley, these are large, the broker dealers operating a non-ATS, a single dealer platform, but also they operate ATSs. These are separate platforms, but that they belong to the same parent company. Or Virtue is operating a single dealer platform, a wholesaler. These are both under the category of non-ATSs, but also they operate ATS as well.
Okay, but I just meant then the choice of routing an order, for example, an algorithmic order to one of these platforms is another choice, and using this angle, say, Yunus, what is the interest or the advantage for the one that has this decision to exert either to root on one choice or another choice, depending on their economic interests. And these are key questions to better understand when or when not the routing is done.
Yeah, I think in terms of the traders' routing decisions, and single dealer platforms is, non-ATSs, I can say, are more liquid. But when they suspect that you are an informed trader, they charge you a higher, higher spreads. So you get a worse deal in a non-ATS if you are an informed trader if you get caught. And non-ATSs write algorithms to detect informed trading. So if you get caught, your order is directed to exchanges or ATSs or get rejected. So in this regard, going to ATSs going to non-ATSs in terms of informed trader can be a little bit risky, but there's more liquidity. ATSs, I show you a transparency reduced fill rate by 0.6%, which corresponds to, I think, around a 15% of the median fill rate in ATSs. ATSs execution probability is so low, but you can rest your order without being caught longer. Did they help, Paul?
Yes, thank you. But I was considering in Europe, like the aggressive order from usually investors, it's like single dealer platform are mostly operated in that way, but it's probably different in the US. And then aggressive orders or passive orders follow a different logic. So then the fill rate matters less, but I won't monopolize the discussion. Thank you. Thank you, Yunus.
Thank you so much, Paul. Great question. Thank you.
Okay, so a couple of hands. Rui Hong, you're next.
Yeah. It's just a quick question. If we go back, I think it's 21, page 21 or something. The way you calculate the market impact, or maybe go back the way you calculate the market impact. Yes, just one thing. I wonder because for non-ATS, you're talking about is like a broker dealer, right? A dealer trade. You do not have time to fill, right? I think you're talking about the execution time, but there is no time, right? Because one side is from the dealer, they code in both sides, ask and bid, right? And you only be able to use market order. Is it right? Or I totally get on?
Yes, yes, you are right. We consider only one side of the market order.
Yeah. So from the other side, of course, the ask and bid all provided by the guy, the UBS or who, right? And I come in, if I want to buy, I take ask zero, right? So I just wonder, does the effect spread would be automatically to be ask zero minus M0?
No. These bid and ask prices are MBBO.
Okay, good. So bid and ask price is from TAC, yeah?
Yes. Bid and ask price from TAC.
PT is what I give. Okay.
Yeah, but
then you say time, the execution time improvement. There is no execution time improvement, right? I take it, right, from my side. If I against the UBS give me PT, right? I take it. For me, execution time is always zero, right?
UBS gives you PT,
it's not zero. It's when you submit the order. It's like when the order executed. It always take time. It's like even you say nanoseconds, it's not zero. It's like so. It's a time. It's like so it's different measure that in TAC versus measure that in SEC 605. TAC data is like okay, you measure at the time of execution because you don't know when you submit the order. 605 data, it's like you submit an order. You need to wait a little bit to get the order executed. It's not zero.
Okay, it's not zero because what I'm thinking is like I only use market order. I expect it's very quick, right? And the other one, if you look on the effect, right? If I understand it right, if you look on the order size, yeah, I understand is ask if you see the order size change after the transparency. it looks like it's after the change of the transparency. The middle size of the order moved from the ATS to non-ATS. You can see the overall non-ATS order size increase. Now, if you imagine non-ATS, on the other side is UBS, okay, this one guy. So that means once the order size increase, it will take more time for him to unwind because you buy from them, at the end, they need to buy from market, right? Because they inventory control, yeah? So does that means maybe because the order size increase, you shouldn't use the 5 minutes reversion. You need to have much longer for non-ATS after the change. Because the order size increase, and you expect them to unwind time longer. So the time scale might be not exactly the same, right? When you measure
your intuition is absolutely right. If there's an increase in order size, so the execution time should be longer. But that's the reason that strengthens our result. We find the execution time actually is shorter.
No. What I try to say is not the execution time. It's the time you calculate the price and tag. You say after you execute, you look on 5 minutes, right? Now think about right?
Yes, that's a great intuition. Actually, it's Sony Wahao has a paper talking about the term structure of realized spread, and actually that's a reform of 605 data. They were put better timestamp to calculate a realized spread. That's one of the contribution of Sony Wahao's paper. But we deal with previous data, so that's the best we can do. Absolutely, you're right. It's like the realized spread should be measured at different frequency. You're absolutely right. But in this data set, that's the best we can do.
Okay, yeah. Because what I say is after the transparency change, when you measure the non-ATS price and pack, 5 minutes might be too short. Because the overall take time for UBS to unwind, might be used 2 minutes to be able to unwind this position in their inventory. But now because the overall order size is increased and the time for him to unwind this position, it might be take longer. And so you measure the effective spread, maybe not exactly the right, not 5 minutes anymore. Maybe you need even longer. So that's my point. Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, but one thing, I mean, in before and after transparency, more than 90% of the executions happen in the first 30 seconds. So they are so quick. They work so quick and they are quick. They became quicker after transparency.
Yeah, that's where my question is. So I don't see what's the relation between transparency and the speed of execution. I think mostly the speed is driven by how volatile the market is. If the order becomes executable, that's when it will execute. And also, if you want to go on the nanosecond level, then it really depends not so much on transparency, but on the two factors like what Mao had, the improvement in technology, right? The matching engine technology, and then the reduction in latency due to the microwave towers. Those factors will more drive the speed of execution. Volatility and the infrastructure. How will transparency affect speed? I'm finding it hard to digest as well.
They have a better idea of the volume distribution across ATSs before, also non-ATSs. Before, for example, before this ATS data, people were using the TAP group and the Rosenblatt Securities data, which was reporting only aggregate volume. Like for UBS, Credit Suisse, the people knew the aggregate volume. But after this ATS, people started to know on a stock by stock basis. And then also, if you check the market leaders for stock by stock ATSs, it's not like a concentrated. You can find every non-ATS is a market leader in some stocks. So there.
And Pankaj, the other thing is you're absolutely right. Volatility will affect execution time. That's the reason we need a better control group. So in this paper, we actually control high dimensional fixed effect. It's a stock by market center fixed effect. So if there's a general like market condition change, we have already controlled that because it's compared not only at like a stock level, it's also with relative to other market centers. So we actually control for liquidity. It's not perfect, but that's the best identification we can think of. It's like a high dimensional fixed effect. Yeah.
No, thank you.
Okay, I don't know if there are more questions coming, but we're on the top of the hour, and let me announce the next seminar. That will be on April 2nd by Karanfil Todorov. So I hope to see you all then. Let's see if there are any remaining questions here before we close. Well, it seems like we have run out of questions. So thanks a lot, Yunus and Mao, for this interesting paper, and for everyone as well. Have a great day and evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bert.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So Paul left.